This was an unusually strong class. Some of you may be aware of that, some of you may not. I don't do a lot to measure the effectiveness of a class, but one thing that always speaks to me is if when I am looking at you, you turn into energy, that the person disappears completely, that you are nothing but energy construct. In alignment or misalignment, it doesn't matter, it's not a judgment, but that something starts to happen within our contact with one another where alignment arrives. It's very clear, it's very experiential, it is very powerful. It is impossible to explain it to any of you because the mind will not process it. It is completely disembodied experience. And yet, for each of you, it is a moving beyond the construct that you tend to hold for yourselves. There is something inside that is releasing you from you. I know it's a strong class when there's nothing you can do to stop me, basically. Where somehow or another energy is too strong for you to go, what's he doing? Why is he doing that? I don't understand any of this. All of that just disappears. And even if it doesn't disappear from your ego-minded self, it is working at a different level and you are not caught in it. Every one of you allowed an access today, especially my older students, that has never been allowed before. Very, very old patterns, and some of you have had old patterns for a very long time, were finally manipulated out of their construct. Part of it has to do with the fact that there are a lot of new students here, and we are attracting a lot of people from what you might call the non-dualist world, or the Buddha at the gas pump world. But it adds very new energy to the dynamic of the class, and it serves the class very well. Rudy used to always say that as the class grew, he would attract more and more developed people, and those of us who started early would be challenged dramatically, because the energy would rise so much that we would have to work twice as hard to be able to stay part of what was going on. And that's kind of what I felt today, but everyone here was doing it. Everyone. On some level, this is a goalless class. We are not trying to get anywhere, although, as I've said many times, for many, many, many years and decades, I was goal-directed. I really felt I had to get there, and what was I doing wrong that wasn't getting me there? And that was always very frustrating. And of course, the awakening experience is that you are there. And then struggle stops. At least struggle with trying to get somewhere. Then there is, if you will, sort of the struggle with being here. And that doesn't exactly go away because we live in a world of duality. Good and evil, light and dark. And that presents struggle. The extraordinary thing about awakened consciousness is that you don't perceive it as struggle, you just perceive it as what is. And you stop fighting. You just enter into the being that is this totality that includes everything, including high and low, up and down, in and out. It's all one thing, and you are a particle and the totality. That's what we all are. If there is a goal, the best way I think it can be described is to know that this is that. Ancient saying, Sanskrit saying, I am that. Here's what kind of happens in the spiritual journey. somewhere along the way, something gives you an awareness of the idea that there's something more. It can come as an actual experience. A lot of you have had an experience that can last 30 seconds or 3 months or a year, an experience of out of normal consciousness. It can be called higher consciousness, God consciousness, brilliant illumination. It can be called a kind of stepping outside the boundaries of the material universe as we know it. And you have that insight, that moment, that timeless awareness that we are one with something so much greater than anything that life shows us in its normal day-to-day activities. Here's what happens. Unless you die, literally, at that moment, you come back into bodily form and awareness. And everything that implies. You come back into the realm of pleasure and the realm of pain. The realm of joy and the realm of suffering. And we're all in it. We're all in that realm together. And the big thing that distinguishes you from the masses of men is you return to this knowing that this is only a small part of that. Or else just knowing that there is that, something greater, something vast, something in which you exist. For some people, that larger awareness is so absolute and powerful and liberating that you give up fear. You so know and trust the reality of that vastness, the embrace of cosmic truth, that you are no longer frightened of anything. Some people. Some people then live their lives accordingly, and others live their lives wanting to get back to that. How do I get back to that? I don't want to live here. I want to live there. Which basically implies you have re-entered duality. You are here and there is there, and you are separated. And that causes suffering, because you want to be back in oneness. But where do you think you are? Where do you think you can go to that's out of oneness? Blissful consciousness, if that's what you attain, illuminated consciousness, if that's your experience, has purpose. It awakens you to something vast. But why does it bring you back here? Not everybody comes back on some level. Some people walk around like this from then on. But they still eat, they still shit, they still sleep, they still get arthritis, they still have all these issues. But they're still in a state of ongoing awareness and extraordinary gratitude, if you will, or some say bliss. Others of us come back to, I got to pay the bills, I got to get to work, my girlfriend doesn't love me, the kids aren't listening to me, whatever the thing you come back to. And you go, how can I live apart from that? And of course the secret is, I said it before, this is that. This is that. Stubbing your toe is that. Running out of gas on the highway is that. Sitting in front of the TV watching mindless stuff is that. There's nothing that is not that. And so the fact that you're back in your mind saying this is and that isn't is where trouble comes in. Because what you wake up to is all of it. All of it. You are all of it. You are not only one with it, you are it. There's no even you and it. That's the problem. As long as there's you and it, that's problematic. On the other hand, if you are you and it, which most of us are, then go okay to that. Because that separation is still part of oneness. And so many people struggle with that. They keep thinking, if I don't have that bliss, something's wrong with me. I'm imperfect. I failed. No, you haven't failed. Let me put it this way. Bliss comes when it wants to come. And it goes away when it wants to go away. And nothing is wrong. Clouds come into the sky when they want to come in. Thunderstorms come when they want to come. Night stars come when they want to come. And it changes. It just keeps changing. Who is to hold on? You want to hold on to the sun all day? Get in an airplane and just keep circling the world. You know, you can have sun 24 hours 7. But what an unnatural state. Who wants that? I know you may have had that. But most people don't live on airplanes, and we really do experience change, and change is the nature of what is. The problem is that we don't appreciate what is, and it's such an old problem. We're so caught up in the minutia of our day-to-day life. We're so angry, and so fearful, and so sad, and so hopeful, and so desiring, but we're not here. We're always reaching for the thing that isn't and hating the thing that was, or wishing we could get back to what was and not go forward into what's coming. We have all these horrible, horrible dilemmas, and we're not just here. Just here. There's a wonderful play by Thornton Wilder called Our Town, one of the great plays. And in it, Emily dies in childbirth. And she goes to the graveyard with all of her ancestors, and they tell her she gets a shot at coming back for one day, back to life, to be reborn, if you will, to one day, pick a day. And she picks her birthday, 15th birthday, I think. She picks her 15th birthday, and suddenly she's back in her house, and her mother is cooking. And in the last production of this in New York, I read about this, and I didn't see it and wanted to. The mother is on stage making bacon and eggs, and the whole audience is experiencing the smell of bacon and eggs. So this becomes completely tactile for everybody. But Emily comes back and goes, oh, how did I miss this? How did I miss what this is? How did I miss the beauty, the love, the joy, my mom, getting up in the morning, the sun coming out, the smell of bacon, the taste of life, the joy of being, the simple moment-to-moment reality. And everyone in the auditorium watching the show goes, yes, I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss it. And then the show's over and they miss it. They go back outside and immediately it falls away. It falls away. Why? Because we can't hold it. It can't be held. What's trying to hold this? Your ego mind. Your ego mind is a construct of time. The not holding is timeless. Holding life means that it's slipping through your fingers. Letting go, nothing is happening. It just is. It just is. You're not reaching for the next moment. You're not holding on to the old one. You're just sitting there and you're looking what's in front of you, and something can happen intellectually, if you're lucky, that goes, this is that. And you can begin to start to fall into that. Awakening, my experience of awakening, is that's what awakening is. I finally arrive at going, as I've said thousands of times, wow, 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 all day long, wow, wow, wow. And then there's this unbearably beautiful gratitude for it. And you just feel this. You just feel this. I can't say all the time. Here's an interesting thing. You don't feel it all the time. Because it goes away. We were driving here yesterday from San Rafael, having a wonderful trip. My granddaughter was driving with us and my son, and her brother was flying with her mother, but Talia was with us in the car, and Josh, and she's reading. She's so happy. She's so thrilled by this ride. And about midway through, she just throws up all over the car. Everywhere, explosive stuff on the 5. Those of you who know the 5 know there's nowhere to pull off, but we pulled off. And we had nothing but Kleenex to clean up. It was so awful. The smell was so terrible. And you have those moments in life, and you go, why me, God? You have them. And we all do. We all do. And it's not like they are punishment, and they're not anything but what is. And you start to find a way to incorporate the what is without thinking you've been singled out for special status because you have awakened to what is. What is what it is, always. And the great thing you get from it is finally going, okay. And we all did. We drove another, whatever it is, 200 miles. It wasn't even that bad ultimately. She had just had apricot and plum jelly something, and so it had a little flavor of apricot and plum jelly. But it was really, really still an exquisite trip. It was exquisite. And that's the difference. Awakened mind will find a way of seeing joy and beauty, and the unawakened mind will be angry and hostile. And in a way you can't pretend one or the other, but you can cultivate. You can cultivate awakened mind. If it doesn't just happen, Rudy would say, take a breath. And let the bullshit go. Just let it go. There is no obligation to hold on to it, and there is no obligation to even make it yours. To use the image of this, the sky. When those clouds come in and the grayness happens and the rain happens, which we also got, by the way, pouring rain most of the trip, which all I could think of was good for the ground and good for the drought. But there were people out there, I'm sure, cursing the rain. And what value does that have? What benefit does it have? Who suffers when you curse the rain? The ground doesn't suffer. The rain doesn't suffer. The earth doesn't suffer, really. Who suffers? You do. Who has chosen to be miserable? Who has chosen to live in a toxic environment in their own mind? You have. Why? Why? You have to ask yourself that question. Why do I do this over and over and over? Part of it's habitual. You've been doing it since you were a kid. Part of it is because it's familiar in its habitual nature, and you're sort of addicted to the familiar and terrified of the unfamiliar. I mean, what would it be like not to be angry at the rain? What would it feel like? You don't want to go there. I don't want to know what it's like to be happy. Happiness is not... The thing I hate about happiness is it never lasts, so I am not going there. The thing that always seems to last is unhappiness. At least I always come back to it. That's what people say. That's familiar, that's where I want to live. Not that they want to, because they all want happiness. But I remember being something like 12 years old or 15, and I said, why can't I hold on to this? Why does this happiness keep coming and going, coming and going? I didn't know that's the nature of duality. Trying to hold anything is where you're in trouble. You get in trouble. And you can learn not to do that. You can learn not to do it. I will tell you this. If you don't learn to do it, life gets harder and harder as your body starts to betray you, which it will. When you start to experience the pain and suffering of things not working, whether your mind or your physical body or whatever, and a lot of you have touched all this because we're all alive, but as you get older, it's more persistent. Life starts to slip away in some sense, and that's when ego mind starts to come in the loudest. If you haven't worked out some system of dealing with the betrayal of the body, which is not really betrayal because it's been told to us from the day one, the body is going to disintegrate. It's going to be annihilated. You, to the degree that you think you're your body, are going to be annihilated. And your body's not going to like it at all. And I was talking to the introductory class today, and I was telling them, I mean, some of you have listened to my recent talks, so you know, a month ago, I had a car accident that could have killed me. you know, and Blanche and my brother and sister-in-law did not kill us, luckily, I think. And then a week and a half ago, I discovered I was minutes away from a fatal heart attack. And so I was in the hospital and got a stent put in. It's like two shots. And I'm going, whoa. I don't, either I'm very lucky or there's you know, something pointing at me. You know, like, okay, this is the end kind of thing. And one of the things that comes up, if you're in the position of having what is heart failure, according to the literature which I read online, was a sense of pervading doom. It's in the literature. And I would wake up in the middle of the night in doom. I could feel it. And it was so existential and so physiological. It was feelings I'd never had before in that way, and they were so unpleasant, so not part of what I normally would experience. It was really dark and foreboding and dangerous and awful. And so it's not one of those little things you can take a breath and go, okay, this goes away. It's like, this was big, and it's middle of the night. So I had to sit down. I mean, to sit up, really, get out of bed. And I just sat. And I said, I am not turning away from doom. I am not turning away from the inevitable. I am going to face this thing as deeply as I can and say yes to it. I cannot tell you what a powerful practice that is. It's not an abstract thing because it's not like you're pretending to do it. You're doing it because it's right in front of you. It is what is. And there you are going, okay, this is no longer practice. This is, I don't know, am I going to die right now? I don't know. And so I'm sitting there, and it's awful and unpleasant and dark, and then this thing happens, for me, at the center of it all, this kind of, oh, I don't know how to describe it. It's just love, beauty, truth, simplicity, opening, gratitude. It's a yes to doom. Just a yes. You know, when it came time to go to the hospital, I may have talked about this last week, forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but at an operation I had about 4 years ago, different altogether, driving to the hospital was like, oh, how beautiful the river is, how beautiful the garbage is, how beautiful. I was really playing it. I mean, I could really feel myself trying to appreciate everything. This time, none of that. It was just what is. There was no trying to extol it, make it something else. It just is. And the operation was with no tension. It was with no tension. It wasn't an operation, it's a procedure, really. But the difference was extraordinary because there was no obstacle. It was just yes. So when you say yes to this, yes to what is, when you open to I am that, what happens is that you are preparing yourself for the biggest opening of your life. And every one of you is going to have to do it. I don't care who you are. You may have to do it on the sly or in the instant or over a course of time. You may suffer a lot. You may not suffer a lot, whatever it may be, but you're going to go there. You are, unless I mean, I hear a few awakened people who say they're not afraid. They're not afraid of death. They're not afraid of anything. You know, I tell this story endlessly, forgive me. My grandpa was 103 and not afraid of death. And he had a heart failure. And they rushed him to the hospital and they said, Mr. Rubin, we can save you if we act right now. He said, no, I'm ready to go. And then about 10 minutes later, he realized he was going to die. And it was the first time he'd ever realized it, really. And he said, save me! Save me! And they said, it's too late. And he died. It's an interesting story because we all have these mental things of, you know, oh, I'm ready, everything is fine. I know awakened guys who did not like dying. And I will add, I've done this before, Christ to that list of people who basically said in the Garden of Gethsemane, please take this cup from my lips. Nobody wants it. Nobody likes it, but it is what is. And much of our training, much of this work is to open to everything. Open, 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 yes, yes, or to be open. The difference is trying and doing or being. Awakening is a gift where you don't have to try so much, although I'm telling you, wherever I am, I had to let go of trying to go back to being, which was wonderful. But if you're still trying, it's fine. It'll get you to the same place. Try to let go. Try to open. Take that breath. And really importantly, ask for help. Ask for help, because we are all helpless. Trust me on that. We are all helpless. You may think you got it together, but it's your ego that thinks that. It's your mind that thinks that. Truth is, none of us can do it alone. None of us. And none of us are alone. In fact, none of us are divorced from what is. The reality of what is, which is, by the way, totally incomprehensible and beyond any kind of understanding, but it is. And you know it. When you know it, you know it. And you live in this unbelievable state of, even when it turns into your granddaughter throwing up in the car, you're just okay. There is a wisdom base, much greater than a knowledge base. There is a wisdom base that just takes over, and its primary teaching is yes. Its primary teaching is you'll never get it. You will never understand it. You will never put it together. But my lack of understanding is so much greater than everything I ever understood before. My not knowing is everything. Everything. I don't pretend to a single piece of information or knowledge, because whatever it is evaporates instantly in the transformation of timelessness. It doesn't hold up. Nothing holds up. It all goes. So why hold on to anything? Just be. And the miracle of just being is what you need at any given moment arises. And what's so incredible about awakening is that it arises independent of your asking for it, or if you're wishing for it, or thinking it should be there. It just comes. That's the miracle of awakening. You just walk around and you trust, or you know, that what needs to be will be. I did not know I had a heart condition. I knew I was walking up hills because I've been walking a lot, thanks to my iPhone and its measuring of steps. I've been walking and walking, and every time I go up the hill, I would go, oh, and it would hurt. And the last time it hurt way too much. And I went to see a different doctor. I had a regular appointment, and I was describing what happens, and he said, you have a heart condition. My other doctor said, no, you just have something that happened in the car accident. Just get physical therapy. Well, this other doctor was just the right thing I needed to hear at that very moment. And because of him, I called my cardiologist, and I went in, and he said, you've got this, classical, that, and I was on the operating table within 24 hours. That's kind of how it can work. It's paying attention to the thing that reveals itself, that presents itself. And for me, I look at it and I go, I'm being taught every second. I'm being told what to do every second. And as I sit here and I work with each of you, which is really amazing, something tells me what to do with each of you. The moment I'm present with you, I am really with you. I am inside you. I've said this before too. It's like a computer guy who takes over your computer to do the work on it. It's exactly what it feels like. I go into your system, and I, who cannot figure out how to get my iPhone to work, I go inside your system, and it shows me exactly what button to push, how to push it, where to move it, what energy to change. It does it, it's done, tells me to go move on. I don't understand it for a minute. It may sound like voodoo, and it may be the thing that makes all of you say, enough, this is, bless you. You know, it's like, why would I want to put myself in this guy's hands? I wouldn't, on one level. On the other hand, I put myself in Rudy's hands, and it changed my life. It changed my life. I just said yes because nobody else was sitting there trying to help me. Nobody else was there trying to fix the system. Nobody else was there talking about the system. Most people were talking about Starbucks, or whatever people were talking about in the 1960s, you know. It was like, you know, just chatter, 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 chatter. And it's so boring. It's so boring. All the chatter about nothing. About nothing. You know, right now it's called Star Wars. You know, the chatter about Star Wars, it's pervasive. The culture is overwhelmed with a movie that came out, how many years ago? In the 70s? You know, it has incarnations since then, but what is this thing, and why is everybody so caught in it? It's okay to be caught in it. I'm not saying any of this is wrong, but it's mindless. It does nothing for your awakening to who you are. It does nothing. The only thing that will awaken you to who you are is sit still. Sit still. Be in yourself. Watch this thing unfold. Go into your heart and be amazed by what happens. Nobody's telling you to do that. In truth, Luke tried to tell us that. Luke said, trust the Force. You know, well, Luke didn't. Obi-Wan told us, trust the Force, Luke. And Luke did. But then the Force became magic in all these other shows, and I don't know where it went. But the first one says, trust the Force, Luke. What did he have to do? He had to turn off the computer, right, in the guidance system, because he had to make a very direct run at the Death Star. He had to turn it all off, and then he found it. That's what we all have to do. Turn off the computer in your mind, even the one in your outside of you. Turn all that off for a period of time and trust the Force, Luke. Trust this thing. It knows what it's doing. It's so phenomenal. It's so beautiful. It's so everything you're living for. And not to find it, to get to the end of your life like my grandpa and go, oh, I'm ready, and then to discover you never even looked. You never even once really understood it. You know, my grandpa, God bless him, listened to Johnny Carson all the time. He lived for Johnny Carson. And that was fine. You can do that. But you've got to stop somewhere along the way and go, I'm alive. I am in this thing called life. What is this thing that I'm in? What is this? You can question it until you get to the point where you realize, one, there's no answer, and two, it's still there. This is real. This is really happening. This is not, well, they say it's a dream in certain parts of the awakened world, and you can call it that, but I'm telling you, if I stick a pin in your finger, that dream is going to feel very real. And this is that. That vast, unmanifested truth becomes this. Why? Who knows? Who knows? Lots of reasons given. Who knows? All I can tell you is, if you spent 5 minutes with my granddaughter or my grandson, you would know why. You would know why. It's so beautiful. And so is life even without my grandchildren. Life is beautiful. Life is a beautiful experience, guys. It's also a horrible experience, but that's part of it. Arrive at this moment. Get to know where you are. Stop long enough to see and feel and touch what is. It's worth it. It's worth it. Any questions? Blanche says if I sit long enough, people will ask a question. I don't really need to do that. I'm just grateful you guys show up. Was that a question? Go for it.
Given that this is the last class before Christmas, I was wondering if you had any thoughts about Jesus, the Christ, his life, the Avatar. Any thoughts about that?
Sure. I mean, should we do a whole other class? You know, it's very interesting. I have a nephew, we're all Jewish family, who's become a born-again Christian, evangelical. No one in the family knows quite what to do with him. Except I really love this guy so much. And we went out to dinner a while back, and he starts out the dinner conversation. So what happens when you die? What do you think happens? And, a general dinner conversation. And of course he was aiming at and pushing me toward Jesus. And my sense of Jesus is that he was God on earth. He knew he was God on earth. I would also say, not to be heretical, but I'm Jewish, you're all God on earth. He knew it. He really knew it. He was sent here, as are all of you, to be a voice for truth and being and love and compassion. And he was so profoundly awake to himself, to his truth, that he was able to change the world. The great gift of Christ, in my mind, is his death and transfiguration. He came into this world in order to teach all of us who suffer, which is probably 99.92% of us, that one, it's human to suffer, and that there is something that goes beyond it. And I always go to my Easter talks. You should come to the Easter talk. The Easter talk is almost always the Christ on the cross moment, which is one, why have you forsaken me? Which is wildly human ego-minded entity suffering, moving into something that's not shared totally in the Gospels, but he goes into this moment of forgive them, for they know not what they do. That transition from feeling abandoned to being the source of love is what we're doing here. We are learning how to transition, or how to prepare ourselves to transition, so that we can, in the most awful of sufferings, find our heart open and care about the other rather than ourselves. That's the great teaching of Christ. That he comes back and survives death. I don't know if I can comment on that. I don't know what to say. It's extraordinary. It's miracle. I don't know what to do with miracle, because it programs the world to believe in the supernatural and the, I'll say unnatural, the other. And I have a feeling it's all right here. I think there's lots of stories out there, but if we start to live in the world of the supernatural, we won't get this. And Christ did not teach the supernatural. He taught, love thy neighbor as thyself. The Sermon on the Mount is one of the great teachings. So I love Jesus. I've had great moments with him. The best moment I ever had with Christ, I've had a number of them, but one of them, I was in a vision somewhere walking up a hill, and Christ was standing on the top, arms out, radiant beyond all understanding, and loving me to the point that I realized this love was going to annihilate me. And I turned and ran down that hill so fast, I had no ability to be embraced by that. In years since, I have arrived at places like a manger once. I couldn't describe it. It was like a barren, rundown building with a cross that was hanging sideways on the wall. And I walked in, and this light filled the room. And something said, fall to your knees. Behold. And I knew I was in Christ's presence. I knew it. And it was like everything anybody who imagines or dreams of that would feel. And I have never lost it. So, this is Christmas and the birth of Christ. The birth of that on the earth. But to celebrate something that happened 2,000, however many, 215, I don't know, years ago, that's fine. I think we have to deeply, deeply love and honor the sacrifice he made for people sitting on their deathbed going, Christ did it, I can do it. That's really important. But I think we have to honor that he was born, and we're told consciously he chose to come into the world, or God chose him to come into the world for this role. We're all here for that. I believe that. We're all here for that. And we can all become that in our own quiet way. We don't have to have a world to hear our teaching. It can be one other person. But that's kind of the goal, and I think that's what it means to be born again, although I don't always feel that in born-again people, because clearly it's easy to be born again. It's hard to be born again. But that's what all this is about. When Emily, came back from the death to have one day on earth, she came back from death and arrived here. And she had a day to finally understand what life is. Death and rebirth, which happens spiritually, which happens to those who awaken, is another death and rebirth. You die to self for, again, a minute or a month or a year, and then you come back to this. You're reborn. Here you are. What can you do with it? If you want to be reminded what to do with it, there's Buddha, there's Hindu scripture, there's Moses, the Jewish scripture, there's Christ, there's Muhammad. I mean, there are lots of teachers. Christ happens to be unbelievably articulate, and he really lived it out in a way that we can all grow from. So I honor that birth, and I'm grateful that Christ was here, but I'm also grateful you're here, because I know you're doing the same work. Anybody else? Okay, guys. Thank you so much for coming. There will be a class here next weekend, and then it gets complicated, but we'll send out notes to people who are on the email list about when we'll be back. There are classes every week. Someone is sitting here every Sunday morning, and they're all extraordinary and wonderful beings. Feel free to come. Immerse yourself in the energy of the group and of the teaching. And I'll see you if you show up again when I return.